It's Friday, April 10th, 2026. The ceasefire with Iran is 2 days old and the Strait of Hormuz is still basically closed. And I know what you're thinking because I'm thinking the same damn thing. Here we go again. But before we get into the doom and gloom, because I know some of you are already warming up the "we got played" takes, let me actually walk you through what's happening, what the U.S. military has in position, and why this situation isn't nearly as hopeless as the black pill doomer crowd wants you to believe. Because there's a difference between being honest about the challenge and being a defeatist. And I'm tired of people who call themselves patriots spending all day, every day, telling you America can't win. We can, and we will. But let's talk about what it actually takes. So here's the raw situation on the ground. 5 ships got through on Wednesday, 7 on Thursday. That's it. Out of a normal daily average of over 600, there are more. 5 ships got through on Wednesday, 7 on Thursday. That's it. Out of a normal daily average of over 100, there are more than 600 vessels still stranded in the Gulf right now, including over 300 tankers. You can see them on the horizon here. 20,000 civilian mariners are stuck on those ships. The ceasefire was supposed to reopen the strait. That was the deal. President Trump said it himself. Complete, immediate, and safe opening. Iran said sure, and then they didn't do it. Now, I know that's shocking. The mafia regime that's lied to the world for 47 years lied again. Nobody saw that coming, right? Well, we saw it coming. The president is planned for it. And I'm sure he's got an ulterior plan to make them pay for this. The Strait of Hormuz shipping traffic is effectively at a standstill. And it gets better. Iran's Navy actually released a map. You can see it right here. They call this a danger zone. And it gets better. Iran's Navy actually released a map. You can see it right here, showing what they call a danger zone in the strait. Basically telling the world, yeah, we mine these waters. Here's where not to drive your ship. And then they're routing vessels through a narrow corridor right next to their coastline past Lyric Island, where the IRGC can monitor everything. They're charging over $1 million per ship to transit, payable in Chinese yuan or cryptocurrency, not US dollars. And they're providing IRGC escorts, a couple of speedboats, as your security detail. This is a protection racket. This is the mafia charging you to use a road that they didn't build. And I want you to hear what the CEO of Abu Dhabi's national oil company said. Sultan Al Jaber, this is the head of the ADNOC, one of the biggest energy companies on earth. He came out and said publicly the Strait of Hormuz is not open. Access is being restricted, conditioned, and controlled. He said conditional passage is not passage, it's coercion.
The strait looks like it's effectively closed still at this point, and that is obviously it is the most important thing to talk about in terms of the economy and global oil supply and what we do in the future. What do you think needs to be done, not just right now, but long term, to try to make it less essential? Is it possible for the rest of the world to secure passage in the strait, or is it possible to do it other ways over the next couple of years, make sure we're not so dependent on that? What would you do?
Well, good morning, Joe. Look, I think that clearly we have a problem with the ceasefire if the straits are not open and they are now closed. We have only had 4 ships go through. That's not much of a ceasefire when the key point, which is the opening of the straits, are remain closed. And that's why what I wrote in The Atlantic, I think we have to start now to talk about a long-term project that is fairly extensive, because the one thing that we know out of this, we cannot regain control of the straits. It's right at the Iranian waterway. They have the ability, especially now without the war going on, to restore their control. You can call it a toll that they're charging, or you can call it anything else. They will have control. And what the world can't do is allow one country to exert control over one of the most important choke points for energy, and for other things for the rest of the world.
I believe that's the point that Donald Trump sees, the president sees, Department of War sees. And now you're starting to see commercial companies, you're starting to see the corporate world come out and say exactly what needs to be said. 230 tankers loaded with oil are sitting there right now waiting to move. 20% of the global oil and LNG flows through this choke point. The daily cost of this blockade has jumped to over $3 billion. That's not our number. That's what the markets are calculating. Now here's where I need you to pay attention, because this is where the black pill podcasters lose the plot. They see all of this and their takeaway is we lost. Iran won. The ceasefire was a surrender. That is not what's happening. What's happening is called leverage, and the United States has a lot of it. Let's talk about what we have in theater. 2 super carriers, the USS Abraham Lincoln, carrier strike group in the Arabian Sea, the USS Gerald Ford, carrier strike group bringing massive additional firepower. These aren't parked there for show. These are mobile air bases with FA-18 Super Hornets, F-35C Lightnings, and every destroyer and cruiser in those strikes groups is a floating missile battery. President Trump hasn't pulled a single asset out. In fact, he said publicly, and I love this, all U.S. ships, aircraft, and military personnel will remain in and around Iran until the agreement is fully complied with. And if it's not, his words, then the shooting starts, bigger and better, stronger than anyone has seen before. Now, I know some people hear that and roll their eyes. Oh, he's just talking. Really? Because we just spent 40 days blowing apart their military infrastructure. We killed their supreme leader. We degraded their missile capability by over 90%. That's not talking. That's a track record. When this president says the shooting starts, we have 40 days of receipts to prove he means it. And yes, there was some noise about a joint toll venture. The president floated it. The media ran with it, and then hours later, he came out on Truth Social and said if Iran is charging fees, they better stop now. Was the joint venture idea perfect messaging? No. But here's what I need you to understand. The man is negotiating in public, in real time. That's how he operates. And if you've watched him for more than 5 minutes, you know the pattern. Float something, gauge the reaction, then drive the hardest possible deal. The black pill crowd acts like every single statement is a final policy position. It's not. It's a negotiation. And the fact that European allies, Gulf states, and the UAE all immediately came out against tolls, that's pressure building in our direction. That helps us. Let's get the meat of this. If these talks fail, and honestly the odds aren't great, how does the United States actually force the Strait of Hormuz open? Because we can win, and I'm going to walk you through exactly how. The strait is 21 nautical miles wide, tight waters. There's a 4-mile channel, 2 miles in, 2 miles out, that the ships pass. Tight waters. Iran has 3 cards to play, and the U.S. military has an answer for every single one. Card number 1, mines. Iran has been seeding mines in these waters for decades. They released that map telling everyone where the danger zones are, which is basically Iran admitting they mine their own backyard. The U.S. counters with MH-53 mine countermeasure helicopters and specialized MCM vessels that sweep ahead of any convoy. It's slow, it's methodical, but we've been doing this since World War II. We know how to clear a shipping lane. Card number 2, coastal anti-ship missiles. Iran has Chinese upgraded missile systems positioned along their coastline. You can see a couple of these here along this coastline here that they've got positioned. This is where the F-15E Strike Eagles come in, flying overhead, dropping precision munitions on coastal launch sites, ATN Warthogs for close air support, and here's the piece I want to emphasize: drones. Armed drones running persistent combat air patrol over the coastline. Not just ISR, not just watching, teeth, strike capability, without risking a single pilot.
Is there a new danger zone in the Strait of Hormuz? Iran's Navy says there is in this new map, and the price of oil has surged back up. Take a look at that big gray circle. In bold black, that Persian text translates to danger zone. One suggestion, one fear that's being discussed is that Iran's Navy has mined this swath of the strait, which at its narrowest point is only about 21 miles wide, with Iran to the north and Oman to the south. Iran also appears to be telling ships where they should sail. Those are the arrows at the top. Ships sailing out of Hormuz, west to east, would need to sail south of Larak Island. And remember, Larak Island is a so-called toll booth that Iran would very likely use to try to charge any or all vessels using the strait in the future. Ships sailing in would need to sail north of Larak Island, and all of them would then avoid that danger zone. For now, though, only a couple of ships transited through the strait in the first day after the U.S. and Iran announced that ceasefire. That information is coming from Lloyd's List, which
We lost an MQ-4 Global Hawk in the Strait recently. My assessment, it lost link with higher headquarters. I've seen that happen before. Actually seen fighter jets have to go in and shoot these things down because they lose communication. But the lesson isn't drones don't work. The lesson is we need better drones with more autonomy. Platforms like Endural's Fury drones or Shield AI systems that can operate independently and engage IRGC fast attack boats in real time. Card number 3, and this is Iran's signature play, speedboat swarms. IRGC fast attack craft, small, fast, cheap, expendable in tight waters. They can create chaos, but A-10s with a 30mm cannon turn speedboat into fish food. And these armed drones do the same thing from overhead. Iran's speedboat fleet is a harassment tool, not a war-winning weapon against a coordinated U.S. strike group. It's target practice. And don't sleep on the Marine Expeditionary Unit, the MEU, the MU. That is a Marine recon unit. And they would seize and could seize terrain, islands like Keshem and Larak that overlook the strait. You control those islands, you control the choke point. Remember that rescue operation a few weeks back? Coordinated air-ground assault. Approximately 100 Iranian commandos eliminated. Scale that up. Add air superiority, add naval gunfire support. That's what an island seizure looks like, and the Marines train for exactly this kind of operation. The real advantage isn't any single platform, it's integration. Air Force, subsurface, special operations, all working one coordinated machine. That is what the United States military does better than any fighting force in the history of the world. And no amount of speedboats and sea mines changes that fundamental reality. Now, I think it comes to that. Here's my honest assessment. Iran is playing for time. Their new leadership and Israeli intelligence is saying this guy is more radical than the last group. Not less came out, and they said they're going to demand blood money for their dead reparations for their wounded. And they're going to advance the management of the strait to a new stage. Whatever new stage means, it's not open for business. Their Speaker of Parliament dropped a demand for $10 billion in frozen assets, $6 billion in Qatar, $4 billion elsewhere. That is a precondition just to sit down and talk. And they dropped it after Vice President Vance was already airborne headed to Pakistan for negotiations. That's not negotiation in good faith. That's trying to squeeze concessions out of someone who's already committed to showing up. Israel is warning that Iran is using the ceasefire to rebuild, move launchers, relocate air defense, digging out missiles. The IDF briefed that despite military achievements in the operation, Iran is already working to restore missile production. That's what ceasefires do. Both sides reload, regroup, and dig in. And President Trump said as much. Here's the bottom line. The ceasefire probably doesn't survive the week. 5 days maybe. The talks in Islamabad either produce something real or they don't. And based on everything we're seeing, Iran refusing to send their delegation, the Hezbollah-Israel fighting continuing, the strait is still functionally closed. The odds favor a return to hostilities. If that happens, the United States is in a stronger position than we started. 2 carrier strike groups restocked munitions, an enemy whose military infrastructure has been degraded by 40 days of precision strikes, an IRGC that can't communicate, they can't launch at scale, and is reduced to charging tolls from a rowboat. That's not a loss. That's not we got played. That's a superpower that hit pause to reload while holding every card that matters. Now, here's the thing nobody's talking about, and I think it matters. Reza Pahlavi, the son of the last Shah, just met with Iranian-American engineers, investors, tech experts. They're working on solutions for a post-Islamic Republic Iran. That's the long game. That's somebody building the architecture for what comes after this regime fails. And if you're paying attention, that tells you a lot about where this is ultimately headed. The Iranian people deserve better. The American government doesn't need to be yelled at saying death to America on a daily basis. If you like this kind of content, smash the like and subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one. God bless America.